Tuli Chicago, USA. Omukulembeze Kyagulanyi Center mu Bobi Wine gye yagenze. Ekiri eno bulijja bali enguzi ne bagula ebyobugagga mu ggwanga lya America atolooza bikyali byabwe. Gino Museveni ebyobugagga byonna bye baguze mu America nga babibba ku ssente z'omuwi w'omusolo mbu bategekera obukadde bwabwe n'abaana n'abazzukulu baabwe babeere nga balina ebyobugagga mu America bye baateeka amannya amalala okubuzaabuza nga tamanyi n'America ebakenga vere kati nno byonna olukalala oluseregende lwonna lwe baagula mu bintu bye babba mu nsimbi ze baalyamu enguzi byonna bikwatiddwa kati tebikyali byabwe kati bya bannayuganda era bivunaanyizibwako ye President Kyagulanyi Center mu Robert Bobi Wine bw'anaatuula mu ntebe bw'ati abitunde byonna bikola bizimba amasomero bizimba amalwaliro wano mu ggwanga lya Uganda n'okukola enguudo kubanga bya bugagga bya fugge bya buwumbi na bumbi bwana na bwana bwa nsimbi empitirivu General Museveni zadde babbira mu ggwanga lya America luno olugendo lwabadde lwa kitiibwa obuli bw'enguzi General Museveni agenda kiwulira tina Kyagulanyi mulalamu kale andoza kalo tutandike bwe tutye ebigambo bino.
May I tell you, comrades, the thing that pains the dictator is knowing of our annual event during his State House briefing. But what is corruption? We so much hear about it. It pains us. And so I'm inviting you to my class, but I'm cutting the class of an hour into 5 minutes so I can give my faculty and colleagues to also participate and share what they have been preparing. Of course, it's the misuse of power. It destroys our lives. I was looking at online statement of a friend and I could see Wave transaction would remit 90% of the quarterly budget, the money that goes to our people back home. And I'm like, is this what you spend sending money home? He says, yeah. And so in this training, again, we are going to look and explore the insidious effects of corruption on individuals. And so, may I ask you to silence your phone and detach yourself for the 5 minutes of social media for now. Katie, move to the next slide. In a society like ours that is so corroded with corruption and bribery, it tatters us and it hinders our economic growth. Government officials misuse the power for personal gain, and this leads us to have the mistreatment and mistrust of our local government and officers. It undermines the social cohesion and trust, leading to a decreased civic engagement, collaboration that causes the social and political instability. Next slide, Katie. You and I know the definitions of corruption. That would be my freshman year undergrad students. It's a criminal offense that quite often is corrupted by our Ugandan government officials. Next. It's the common man's blood. It is the cancer that has castigated many of our local officers. Next slide. Does anyone see the dangers of these figures? The absenteeism, the corruption. Kate, can you move that pulpit, please, on the left? Bribing the judicial officers, corruption in the procurement. Does anyone see where we are? Why our country has been hijacked by the wolves and what that leads to us? And why embassies close down doors? And many embassies are going to be closing down doors next year, 2025. The implications of corruption, the loss of productivity, 3.6 million annually would require each of the 135 districts to employ at least 51 youth annually. The numbers, ladies and gentlemen, speak for themselves. And we don't need even to explain more. the loss of environmental resources, the rate at which we are destroying our own natural reserves so that better housing and empty complexes are built. You go to Kampala and you find these magnificent complexes, second, third floors are empty. It is only the down basement floor. Bribes and kickbacks. Many of our investors who love Uganda, who are our friends for the country, go there, they catch another straight flight back because they can't wait in their hotels and wait for decisions to be made. So many red flags. The judicial corruption that has eroded our public interest within the people that we so much trust. Of course, you know all these bribery, the embezzlement, the graft, the money laundering, personal greed, low awareness of courage to denounce corruption within those that we so much trust, lack of transparency, promoting someone based solely on loyalty or organization skills, minimizing or responding mildly to corruption allegations and limited authority to decisively punish and bring those to book. The diversion of public funds, which has eroded the gist, the moral ethics of our beloved country. And feel free to take pictures, although I told you to detach yourself from social media for 5 minutes. But some of this is critical for your presentations as well in the future. And I'll give this PowerPoint to you when we're done with the conference. But the misallocation of resources towards development projects. Many of you ask, why is the US not having the political will to fight against the dictator? That is a big subject that will take us another 1 hour, but it will be another presentation for another time. Diminished access of fundamental services such as health care, education. Next slide, Katie. Those are some of the scandals. There are many, about 270. When we last checked, the junk helicopters. For our audience from out of the country, Germany and Australia, in America here we do it differently. We dig deeper to the core. We ask our FBI personnel, field officers, and CIA. We make networks and contacts, and we get briefings for what is happening on the ground. But what did Kofi Annan say? Katie, can you read that for us? Next slide. How do we avoid corruption? 6 observations: promote transparency and accountability. Technology can be utilized to detect and prevent corruption. Provide citizens with tools and platforms they need to help expose the thieves and the shenanigans of the dictator that he so much uses. Let's get involved with international organizations and cooperate with them to collaborate with these global entities. Okay? Colleagues, we are coordinating in conjunction. Can you go back to the other? Okay. The one next. Next. Again, next. We had skipped that. Right there. Yeah. So strengthening women is key, but we are coordinating with United Nations in this UNODC that helps to follow the money. Our FBI colleagues like that. We follow the money whenever it goes. It leads us to get the fingerprints, who wired what was its purpose and intentions, and it helps us. And so the dictator and his shenanigans are very skilled in hiding the money whenever they think they can hide it, and they think they're pretty getting to be so smart in circumventing and hiding the money under different family members. And so the UN has developed this system of security operatives that help to track jointly within the European Union and our Africa Command to help in following where that money of a specific country, and then where those government corrupt leaders take the money to. And so in the end, once the evidence is brought, then it helps us to know how much money was stolen and where and which banks overseas do we need to freeze that money. And so by the time they know the money has been detected, it's already too late. We've got the money. Let's continue to collaborate with networks. Women should be given leadership positions. Educating 1.8 billion young people on integrity and ethics can build public trust. Ladies and gentlemen, may I submit to you, that's why we are helping to educate, to empower through our American leadership class, the young men and women in Africa, in Kenya and Uganda and the Middle East, to teach them, to raise leaders, so that when we take government, we don't want to be like the Bushmen who didn't know what to do. And that's how our economies are running the way they are running. So combating corruption requires a fundamental shift on mindset, on one that rejects corruption. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm inviting every one of you to use this convention to tackle today's challenges and prepare for the future ones. If we don't educate our young generation about corruption and moral ethics and virtues, they'll also live like the way they have been taught, that when you are corrupt and you bribe money, as long as you keep it in the house, it's still okay. But when you take it away out of country, then you should probably be questioned. That's not what we need to do. And so our focus in helping these students is critical. Katie, can you read that conclusion? Please.
The conclusion states, corruption has a wide-reaching and negative impact on society. It causes economic loss to individuals and companies, damages democratic processes, and creates greater social inequalities. By reducing corruption and encouraging transparency in all public life, governments can generate fairer societies with more equitable outcomes for their citizens. This is essential to build a better future for us all.
Thank you very much. Next slide. So we must all stop corruption, ladies and gentlemen. We must all be defiant and do the very best to stop this stigma. Next. My assignment for you today that would want to get our leadership certificate, do not write the 2-page paper analysis paper today, but at least do the very best in your hotel rooms before going to the boat tonight to at least write me a half a page. In that half-page paper, I want you to discuss corruption and how to combat it. Which countries are the most corrupt? Those are basics. What are the common characteristics of Uganda with its high corruption? Discuss the magnitude of corruption in Uganda. Do higher wages for bureaucrats reduce corruption in Uganda? Submit your answers to me by Saturday today, but I'll extend that tomorrow for Sunday under the American Leadership 94@gmail.com. And then I'll get those names for those that would be the best to issue our certificates of attendance for this conference. Okay? Thank you very much. And those are the references that you'll be tackling, and then we shall continue from there. Thank you very much. Our power.
Let's do it one more time. People power. Our power. Let's do it in people power energy. People power. Our power. Thank you so much, Professor, Mr. Sejinja and Kerry. Thank you so much for that. Amazing. Listening to what was said, I wrote down the quote from Kofi Annan. Very wonderful. It says, if corruption is a disease, then transparency is a central part of its treatment. Be the cure. Now, let me tell you a very short story. When I was in Uganda, I used to work on radio and TV. And every time I went for a press conference, they used to give us some sort of a bribe. And do you know how they called it? Facilitation. So you'd go to cover an event, and then they tell you, please write down your names. And by the end of the press conference, then a guy calls you in a certain room and starts handing you some $20 or $30 or $50. At one time, I was thinking about this, and it was some sort of an epiphany. I'm like, this is a bribe, because one of the guys from the Ministry of Health called me and says, Mordecai, I didn't see my story on the 9 p.m. news. I'm like, yeah, because the editor, decides which story is going to be airing and not. And then it's like, but I gave you my money. I'm like, oh, okay. That's when I started saying, no more taking these cold facilitation. And that, by doing that, I became the cure. I never received any call anymore. I just went to an event and cover it and, come hand over my story to my editor, and that's it. And I can't guarantee you, my folks who used to get all those facilitations were always questioned, receiving calls and messages, or sometimes even threats. I gave you my money and you're not running, my story. So please, let's be the cure. Let's be the cure. All right. Our next speaker is none other than Mr. Tim. I let him pronounce the second name.
Thank you. Okay, cool. Perfect. How's everyone doing? Good. I am having a wonderful time here, and I want to thank you all for your kindness and generosity to allow me to be here and speak to you. So in a few minutes, we'll get the PowerPoint presentation set. I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about what I'll actually talk about. Is while I was researching stuff for this presentation, I realized it wasn't who I was as a person, and it didn't go against values, but it went against how I like to work with people. So in this presentation, at some point, I'm going to ask you all to stand up and participate actually within my presentation. And we're going to go through some different, hopefully eye-opening things. And you don't have to stand up right now, sorry. Please relax. Thank you for your, I like that. You're ready to go. So we'll get to that in just a second. I appreciate that.
Embeera eri mu ggwanga lya United States of America USA NUP Diaspora Convention 2024 yakulaba kulongera kulabisa mu 7 ensi kwongera kumanya bikolero byakola enguzi gyalidde biki byaguze biri luddawa baani ababirimu babiteeka mu mannya g'abaana baabwe babiteeka mu mannya g'abaganda baabwe babiteeka mu mannya g'abakyala baabwe babiteeka mu mannya g'abantu baabwe oba g'abannayuganda abamu namugamba ebyo bibeere mu mannya go nga bakweka ng'ate ebyo byonna byategeerekese era seize all of them wind up keep them Kyagulanyi bw'alayira bimukwase bannayuganda babitunde bazimbe enguudo bazimbe amasomero bazimbe amalwaliro bafuna amazzi amalungi n'amasannyalaze beeyagale kati kyekiriwo byonna gye biri file kwa bisizinge taddamu kubikola taddamu bifunamu gavumenti ennungi bwejja ate bisobola okubijjamu akasente kayambe bannayuganda kaddemu bannayuganda gye baakabba kati no gende Museveni empale zitintima entegetege zemufampa ebyobugagga bigenda bulijjo baba batwala eyo nga beewaana hey kasatwala mu America wano ebinaatawaana bwe muneekalakaasa ne mubyokya ne baana emmundu ne zijja nga tudduka mu America tweyagala tewali byonna bateeka mmanya g'abaana baabwe makyala baabwe baganda baabwe mikwano gyabwe balinzi baabwe byonna byebateekayo kati stamp wanako taali bigenda okubadukudamba na Uganda aye tubyeyagaliremu kubanga byaffe babbira mpewo babbira bwereere byonna kati nno bali mu kufeesa bye bateekayo kati bigenderera baliyo mu maziga bejjusa tikale twabbira ki